Hello everyone, I'm Annie Gibbins and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success and what they have learnt along the way. Hello and welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today I get the joy of introducing you to Leonie McKeon, who is a China negotiation expert and international author. Leonie has lived, worked and travelled in the Greater China region for several years, where she learnt to speak fluent Mandarin and observe the mastery of Chinese negotiation strategies in business and in daily life. So she is going to be able to show us how to pronounce Mandarin in a very easy way. She discovered the 36 Chinese strategies derived from the art of war, which are embedded in Chinese culture and are the keys to understanding Chinese behaviour and thinking. So most Chinese people apparently are unconsciously using these 36 Chinese strategies. And so she teaches clients, and she'll show us today how these 36 Chinese strategies are used and how they can be used to make your strategies more clear in business and in life. So welcome to the program, Leonie.
Thank you, Annie. Great to be here.
Oh, it's a joy. It's a joy to have you on the program today. And I know when I first met you, you just opened my eyes to this whole world of, a very different way of thinking. So how about you start telling the listeners, how does a woman from Adelaide in Australia become an expert in Chinese negotiation?
Good question. Okay. Many years ago, my friend and I, my best mate and I, we left Australia, Melbourne actually, with backpacks on, and off we went travelling around the world. And of course, our parents said, don't sell everything. So we sold everything. And they said, get a two-way ticket. So we got a one-way ticket, as you do.
As you do.
Yeah. And a year and a half went past. And part of that, we travelled around Europe in a little French car, and then we went to live in Israel on a kibbutz for 6 months. So I wasn't spending any money there. We getting $15, I think, a month for things, but we got our clothing and our food and everything. So 6 months of that in Israel, that was fantastic. And then I said to my friend, well, what do you want to do? Go to England, it was winter, or let's just go for broke and spend everything we've got. And so off we went, and then we sort of saw the other part of the world. Then we went to Egypt, we went to Turkey, and then we ended up in India. And a year and a half goes past, and the unfortunate situation happens where we actually had to work.
Oh no, the bubble.
I mean, I was working in Israel breaking eggs in the kitchen, but we've actually had to go out and get a job and get money. And I said to my friend, how much money have you got left? And he told me, and I said, oh, gee, we have to go and get a job. So off we went. I had this fabulous idea that we could go to Hong Kong and we could get a job, maybe in a coffee shop or something. Now, remember, I've got no university degree at this time. And so we're walking around Hong Kong, 3 days go past, and, no one's really. And what we didn't realise, Annie, is that we looked like we had come from India. And everybody in Hong Kong were walking around in smart business suits, and we had drawstring pants on, and our hair was long, and
you're ferals. You've come back.
Yeah, ferals. And we'd sold pretty much everything, because I worked out that denim jeans in India were worth double the price that we paid for them. So off they went. So the backpacks ended up to about a quarter of the size. Anyway, no one was going to give us a job. And so here we are in this really pretty downbeat youth hostel. I think it was about $15 a night. And anyone that has stayed in Hong Kong knows that that's a pretty downbeat place, because it's a pretty expensive place to get a room. Anyway, I'm sure that all of you listening, and you, Annie, you've had the experience where someone's just met you, changed your life, and then never see them again.
Yes.
And it happens, 10 minutes. And this guy, I can still see him in this youth hostel. It was really hot. It was June because we couldn't afford an air-conditioned place. And he was walking around down the corridor, and he had this towel wrapped around him. Just come out of the shower, and it was really hot. And what are you guys doing here? And I said, we're trying to find a job. And he goes, I'll go to Taiwan. Really? What can we do there? And he said, you can teach English. I've been doing it for 6 months. Oh, really? That sounds great. And so off we went, and we had a little bit of credit left on the visa card, and off we went to Taiwan. But what this person forgot to tell us was that they actually wanted American English teachers. And in those days, we were staying in a youth hostel, once again, a really cheap youth hostel. And there were notice boards, not internet or anything, notice boards, English teacher wanted, but they're all American English teacher want. And I said to my friend, we're Australian, we're going to get a job here.
You're going to have
to do?
Accent.
So here we go. So I worked out, okay, we need to be American for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked out that our long A's are their short A's, like our class is their class, right? Mm-hmm. Our glass is their glass. Our up is their like our father is their father. And things like this, and, all the, high top, gym boot, jumper, sweater, boot, trunk. I mean, all those are different, different vocabularies. And so we got a job. And of course, they wanted a university degree, which I didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm now from Boston with a university degree. Really stepped up there. And I worked out that Boston was the closest to the Australian accent. So anyway, so there I was. And in those days, no internet. And I really slipped through the cracks as far as jobs go. I ended up teaching in this really elite language school. I got great training, ended up to be a really good language teacher, actually. And English is a second language.
Check your referees.
Well, what happened, the boss would say to me, Leonie, where's your university degree? And I said, it's coming in the post. Mum's sending it. And it just never arrived. And so after a year, I couldn't speak any Mandarin at that time. And I thought, well, I was actually sick of going to work, and because all of the bills were coming under the door because there was no internet or anything, and they're all in Chinese in the apartment. So I didn't know what was gas or what was electricity. And I'd take everything to to places to try to work out every part of the way, every part of my day was getting things written in Chinese, trying to get to the next place. And so I thought, time to learn the language. So I put myself into a school, intensive Mandarin, and after 6 months, my Mandarin, was growing quite rapidly. I learned also to read and write, which is great. And so then we moved down to Kaohsiung, which is in the south of Taiwan. And that's in those days, there weren't many foreigners there. So that was a real instant sort of whoosh for my language skills. And so
and I remember definitely no plan B if you've got no one else around.
No. And I remember looking for an apartment, and I don't know whether you've ever seen a Chinese newspaper, but there's little tiny characters, and you're looking for an apartment. I was actually the only one that could read Chinese. I'm a little bit obsessive in that way. And most people could speak, but they couldn't actually read. And so I'm reading the apartment, and I would get one character wrong, to find an apartment. And then we'd end up going to this apartment with like 5 floors because I got the character for floor wrong, this kind of thing. But anyway, stayed there for 4 years, actually altogether 5 years in Taiwan. So learnt Mandarin quite fluently. I ended up in a really good job in Kaohsiung, editing a series of language books for children. ESL books. So there were 12 kindergarten, 12 children's books, an ABC book, and a songs book. I was the only foreigner in the office.
Wow.
So you can imagine that was really a challenge. And I remember my boss put me in this taxi. She was a lovely woman. Once again, asked me for my degree, and it never arrived. And she said, I want to give you this job. And I was like, what is it? And so she put me in a cab, and she took me to this great big office, and there were all these Chinese people and all these books. And she said, I want you to edit these books, you know, to work on this project.
Wow.
And so that was great. And then in Taiwan, you have Chinese New Year, like Chinese New Year in Australia, but Chinese New Year, you know, people have at least 2 weeks off, sometimes 3 weeks off. So generally December, January, February is pretty low for work as far as being in Taiwan goes. You know, there's bits and pieces. So we set up a clothing business, bringing clothing from Kathmandu into Taiwan. So we go to Nepal the beginning of December, and then come back generally about the end of February, the beginning of March. So 3 months in Nepal. So we'd order all the stock, which were, at that time, the Chinese women really loved the drop waist dresses and things like that. So, and the great thing about setting up a clothing business in Taiwan is all of the Chinese women are the same size. I mean, it's true.
That's so true.
You know, you don't have to look for all these, like they were all small.
Go from a size 4 to a size 2.
Yeah.
Item.
Exactly. So we go and get what we do is we get all these things made with a tailor in Kathmandu, go for a trek for generally about 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. Come back, pick up everything, look at it all, and then go back to Taiwan and sell it. And that's really what. So I studied Mandarin, taught English, edited children's books, and the clothing business. It was interesting.
Yes.
And the great thing was, I mean, I love Nepal too. So it was a great way of going there and then having a business as well. Yeah. You know, so I really was able to see a lot of the world in that way. And but then after 5 years, and in my life came to a bit of a brick wall because everyone around me has got university degrees. I was able to be Australian, by the way, by the time I got to that point. But, you know, they're talking about their degrees and doing this and doing that. And I thought, maybe I want to go to university, you know, and maybe that's really a good thing to do because I felt like I couldn't really get any further. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll apply to go to university in Australia. And I'll go to China for 3 months and then I'll come back to Australia because I was quite fluent in Mandarin by that point. Yeah. And remembering China is quite different to Taiwan. So it was an instant, a little bit of a culture shock, but I really understood a lot more about China and Taiwan and the connection and Hong Kong and all this kind of thing. So I went to China and I stayed 3 months, and then I loved it so much. I went up the East Coast to Shanghai, Beijing, you know, all around there. And then I thought, this is an opportunity for you to travel, Leonie, because once you get back to Australia and go to university, A, you're not going to have the money, and B, you probably won't be able to do this. So I spent another 8, I think it was, I had spent probably about another at least 6 months in China. So no, I was altogether a year in China. That's right, about 11 months. Mm-hmm. So I went back, got my visa stamp to get in Hong Kong, and then I did all of right over near Tibet. I went down near the Burmese border. Sometimes I didn't speak English for 3 weeks. There was no electricity. It was just amazing. Incredible. You know, I mean, these experiences were absolutely fun. And I have to say, that was the only time in my life I've ever travelled alone. And I have to say there were times when I was looking out of those buses, because some of these buses, I mean, I was backpacking. I was doing it, you know, cheaply. And some of these buses going around these mountains and, you know, you hear the brakes squeak and you know, you're in these buses for 30 hours and stuff and you think, if this goes over, no one will find me. And
I remember that same experience. My husband and I did that when we were in our 20s in Burma or Myanmar, and we were on a bus around. Yeah, it was a crazy experience. You're flying around. We looked at our driver's eyes, and he looked like he was completely wired on something, and he was obviously doing a speed run.
Yeah, okay.
Mountains, and that's that thought. If I disappear now and we just wobble off, will anyone ever find us?
They just go, and you get on the bus and someone would sit, a Chinese person would sit next to you, and there they'd give you that. They just say, "Oh, can you hold this a minute?" And it'd be the live chicken for the dinner that
Oh
night.
yeah,
Oh, okay,
exactly.
Ooh, or there'd be the pig walking up and down. But so came back to Australia, and I decided to go to university, as I said. However, I had been out of Australia for 8 years. Now, what happens with language, which I didn't realise until I had this experience, sometimes you don't realise things until you actually experience them yourself. English had changed. Language grows, thinks, and breathes. Right. My Chinese was fabulous. My English was where I was 8 years ago. There was vocabulary I had no idea existed. I could speak English, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the things in popular culture. I mean, you think about it. If just say that the only place in the world, let's just say if the only place in the world was Australia that had COVID, we were the only place in the world that had words like social distancing and, you know, and all of those things. And then you came into that and you never heard that language being used like that. You think, what is this?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's where I was at. Wow. You know, so yeah, it was like, wow. And then I realized that must happen in Chinese. So that was really a great experience, but I couldn't go to university because my English just wasn't at the standard that I needed to be. So I didn't finish high school. So I put myself in year 12, all writing subjects. There I was, writing. I remember one of the teachers, she said, some of the things you write are back to front. And I said, oh, that's because I've been studying Chinese.
You've now gone to the other side. You're now more Chinese than Aussie.
That's right. But anyway, after that year, that was a good experience. I got into university and studied anthropology. I was going to study Asian studies. Oh, Asian studies, I'll be great at that. But then I realised, that's kind of, it didn't interest me. But then I started to do anthropology and looked at, you know, discourse and language and all these kinds of things, popular culture, which I'm really interested in. And that was just fascinating. So university degree, and then I decided not to be an academic. I was going to be. I had all the marks and everything, and I went to my lecturer and I said, I'm going to try and open a business, you know, because at this time it was 1996. So I think people are just starting to look at China. And he said, okay. He was a bit disappointed because I think my life was kind of quirky, so I would have been a reasonable anthropologist. And so off I went. I always remember walking out of the university gates and I thought, don't know what I'm going to do, but here I go again. And I ended up in this business centre researching. I was just researching those old databases. And this woman comes up, she taps me on the shoulder and she says, what are you doing? What do you look? And I told her I'm looking for, you know, for where I can, you know, things that are to do with China and that kind of thing. And she said, you might be interested in this. And she put this piece of paper in front of me, and it was an entrepreneurial scholarship with the University of Adelaide. She said, you might be interested in this. And I thought, okay. And I thought, that was like a Thursday and the application had to be on the Monday. And I thought, well, I'm not going to destroy my weekend by writing an application. I'll call them up and see if they're interested in somebody like me. And I said, yeah, fabulous. 3 months application. You go through all these processes. I didn't realise what I'd got myself into, but I won the scholarship. I won it.
Brilliant.
For 1998, yeah. So I won the scholarship, and that was huge. You get a stipend, you get offers, everything paid for, everything. So that set me up. Exactly. That was fantastic. But what they required was you had to do a postgraduate degree as well in business.
Okay.
So I'm now a 2-degree person. Yeah. So I set a business up.
Leonie from the backpacker who was obsessed.
Right.
I don't have a degree, and now you're blitzing it. Yeah.
So I set the business up, and the business did training, cultural awareness training, the language training. I ended up having 8 Chinese staff. And on one of my trips to China, it was in the year 2000. And I always knew that I'm teaching I'm teaching business cards and where to sit and do this and language. But I thought, these people in China, they're really good at negotiating. There's got to be something else here. I'm missing something. But I didn't actually consciously think that, but I was unconsciously thinking this. And so on one of my trips to China, second time someone changed my life in this process dramatically. And I met this guy. He said, let's go for coffee. I said, fine, that's terrific. The only coffee shops in those days were Starbucks. And when I go to Shanghai now and I walk past that street and I look at that Starbucks coffee shop and I think, that's where my life changed.
A moment.
So we went for coffee. It was only about 15 minutes. And he said, Leonie, do you understand the 36 Chinese strategies? So I said, from the art of war. And he said, yes. And I said, well, it's 2,500 years old, the art of war. How does that have any bearing on the contemporary business world? And he said, this is the key to understanding China. Every person, and he looked out the window and he said, every Chinese person understands these, they know them, they're absolutely fundamental in the culture. Oh, okay. So I remember being on the plane and I thought, I've got a journey now. And I thought, well, I'm going to ask my staff this. And I went into the office and I said, have you heard of the 36 Chinese strategies? And they looked at me. It was like asking an Australian person if they heard of a koala. And they said, yeah,
of course.
Haven't you? And I thought, oh, okay. So then I took each strategy, the whole 36 of them, spent a lot of time interviewing Chinese people, getting it right, working out what they were, how they work, their experience with the strategies. And then I started delivering workshops. And I became really fascinated in the Chinese negotiating culture. What I realised, okay, Australian people, Australia in general, is not great at negotiation. Yeah. Now, that's not because we're not bright. It's simply because we don't have a culture around negotiation. And I compare it with Chinese culture. Now, Chinese culture, the first thing is that a Chinese child will be walking through markets and negotiating and bargaining. They see it around them all the time. So it's already in their culture. It's already in their environment. The second thing is that most Chinese children, because they're brought up in high-rise, there's no space. So they're brought up on games of strategy, like chess.
Yes.
And backgammon and Go. So all of these children know how to play chess at a very young age. Well, that's a strategic game to learn.
Yes.
Already you're training these young minds. And then the third thing is the 36 Chinese strategies are embedded in the culture. Okay, so what are they? All right, I compare them to don't cry over spilt milk. That's an idiom. And it doesn't mean that someone is standing in the corner crying and the milk is spilling. We actually get to know, we all know what that means.
Yes.
Because people often say to me, Leonie, where do they learn these? Do they learn them in university? Do they learn them at school? Okay, I answer a question with asking you a question. Where did you learn don't cry over spilt milk? You'll probably say, I don't know. That's exactly where that's at. Exactly. So
many of those. There's so many sayings that my kids have said, what does it even mean? Where does it come from? And you have to consciously stop and try and break it down. And then sometimes you even have to go to Google because you're not too sure the origins or even the actual essence of the saying. You just know it. You know what it means.
You just know what it means. Yeah. And this is for Chinese people, this is and the fact that even if they say, we don't use them or something like that, which most Chinese people do, but fundamentally they use them all the time, just knowing. The fact that they know them and most Australian people don't know, there's a point of difference.
Yes.
Already, there's a point of difference. And I also compare it to, you don't have to be religious on this example to understand this, but Australia essentially is, a Christian-based culture, okay? So if I said to people, have you heard of the 10 Commandments? They'd probably say, yeah. I'm not saying they know them all or use them, but they'll probably say, yes, I've heard of them. Now, if I ask that question, and if I ask them, have you heard of the 36 Chinese strategies? They'd probably say no. If I turned that question around to a Chinese person and I said, have you heard of the 36 strategies? Have you heard of the 10 Commandments? The first one would be yes, the second one would be no. So it's fundamental in the culture, just like that particular example that I gave you is fundamental.
So this is hugely significant then, isn't it? So if you're in business negotiations from a Western perspective with a Chinese company, and their basic thinking and the way they approach, even when they discuss how quickly they get into the negotiation, what we're thinking behind that negotiation, the body language that they're watching, all sorts of things, it's huge. You've actually stumbled on the magic ingredient, haven't you? Really,
and it's also
relationship perspective.
And it's also very useful. They're very useful strategies, negotiating strategies to be able to use in a Western culture. If you can take China right out of the picture, you can use them in any environment, you know. So in 2013, I sold that business to my 2 senior staff.
Right.
Okay. Because I was really getting onto the conference speaking circuit. I was delivering, say, three strategies at a keynote conference, that kind of thing. And I became, you know, me. I'm just me now. So I'm working at that very specialist level. And so I sold the business in 2013. And then I continued with my work on the strategies. In 2017, well, a lot of people were asking, and you know, when you go to a conference, you see a speaker and you generally look for a book because they're sitting there signing them and they're, you know, whatever.
Exactly. Makes you look a lot more important when you've got a book.
Yeah. And the other thing too is when you write a book, you know things upside down, back to front and sideways because you've written you know what that's like yourself. So I started writing my books in 2017. And the strategies are arranged in groups of 6. So each one of my books has 6 strategies.
So you need 6 books.
You need 6 books. I've just finished them. Book 6 is just at the editing stage, but book 1 to 5 are all up there. They're all published. They're all there. And it's interesting because here, so for example, the first one is Tame the Tiger. Okay. Now, the books are named according to the topics of the strategies.
Right.
Because Tame the Tiger is about, it's negotiating from a position of power. So that's when you're in a position where you have the power. All right. But this one here, which is book 2, Deceive the Dragon, okay, that's negotiating to retain power. So that's what those strategies are about. Okay, so it goes like that, and they go tiger, dragon, tiger, dragon, tiger, dragon. So that's how they're named. And people, I've named my presentations at conferences after the books. Like I called one of my presentations Lure the Tiger. And that's book 3. And that's when you're negotiating and confronting circumstances.
I think it's so terrific because that's right. You can imagine those both sides. You know, there are times that that's right. The position that you're in, you have that authority, you have that power, and other people are looking to for it or expecting it of you. And there's other times where you're thinking, they've got the power, but how do I work in with that? How do I gain some of that power or change the environment or actually make it even?
Yeah.
Bring it to my side. You know, there's so many elements that are going to come.
There's so many elements. And it's been really fun doing these too, because you may not be able to see that, but the tiger, this has got the tiger stripes, whereas the dragon has the dragon scales in the background. And this character here, the whole series is called The Tao of Negotiation, the path between Eastern strategies and Western minds. The Tao of negotiation, that's what it's called. What is Tao? And that's explained in book 1. That's that character there, Tao. It means the key, the way to go. So the Tao, I've put the character, the only Chinese character just there.
Yeah.
And it means the key to something.
Have
the
you,
way to something.
Have you been asked back then when you have negotiated, have Chinese people noticed, you know, that you understand those 36 principles?
Okay.
They actually looked at you and went, I can see you understand us. Like that's
okay. Now let's look at how Australian people negotiate and Chinese people. It's not that you get pulled into a negotiation. I might be working with a company for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not seen as the negotiator. Okay. I'm actually the person that weaves their way through.
Right.
So yes, they know, but it's not about, oh, yes, she knows about the strategy. See, and we often think of the negotiation as a part of the business.
Yes.
But once people say to me, when do we start negotiating? You know, and I said, when did you meet that person? Oh, 6 months ago at a function. That's when you started.
You're always negotiating. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's like for me, I think they feel secure because I speak the language. I know the etiquette. I know that there'll be no loss of face. You know, because there's things that I guide people through. Like, for example, if we go out for dinner, my client, if they want to give face, I'll be able to only do this with, if they want to give face, say that's my client. This is this cup. That's my client. And this is the Chinese person. This is the Chinese person. My client, I'm just doing this, will put the glass just below them there. But if my client just goes, yay, cheers, it's big loss of face. So it's that guidance. It's that guidance.
Yes.
And if you lose face, if China loses face, I think we've all seen this, what happens with the China-Australia relationship right now. It's been a massive face loss, and we've seen what's happened. The detrimental effect of loss of face is phenomenal.
Yes.
So I guide people through that, and then knowing, you know, where they sit, who's the head person, you know, all that kind of thing, so that I'm not saying that they have to abide by everything that's Chinese, but it's like there are rules, and I guide people through those rules, being able to understand what is going on. Yeah. So
yeah,
the books are, as I said, the books are finished now, which is great. Just the last one, which is called Flee the Dragon. That's the last one. That's about to hit the press soon. So yeah.
Well, so everybody go to just Google Leonie McKeon, and you will definitely find her books, and go to Amazon, I'm assuming, and start searching. What's the best search title for you, Leonie?
It's just type in Leonie McKeon. There's lots of stuff on the internet. And on my website, you'll see leoniemckeon.com, and then you'll see a book section. And it's all, I've got every platform, like there's Booktopia, there's Amazon Australia, Amazon America, because I know some people don't want to buy, I get that, you know.
Yeah.
There's ebook, there's, you know, whatever, there's hard copy, soft copy, whatever you want, it's all there.
It's so fantastic, because I'm looking forward to actually getting stuck into a couple of the books myself, because there's so much that I appreciate. There's many people who go, well, that's right, that's their culture, we don't have to abide by that. But as you just said there, it's just the understanding. You know, I think from the Australian culture, we're so casual, if you like. We're kind of going, oh, even if they don't like it, they'll get over it. You know, it's fine, nothing personal. You know, that's kind of a lot of our culture. And so whereas other people, that's right, if it is their culture that they do take it personally and they do lose face, or it is embarrassing or is awkward, it's not an easy way out of that. It's a very long, protracted time, you know, and sometimes it's like they can't even deal with that person anymore. And if you're the anchor person to negotiate, I think that's a really important point. And I also love your other point about you negotiating all the time, you know, and I've done that when I've coached women, you know, even on speaking at events and so forth, that they'll be so focused on when they get up to stage and then they start. And I go, no, everyone in the room is watching you from the moment you walk in if you're the speaker, to how fidgety you are, to how many times you check your notes, to what you're like while you're standing waiting. You know, they're actually watching you the whole time, you know, in this example, not when you speak, because otherwise you're showing that you've got two or multiple versions of yourself, and they're actually going, well, if you are the real deal, you are confident and prepared the whole time. Or if you're the negotiator, you're the business person, there's a consistency. And so that's where I think we often lose that. We get so focused in the moment or the role, you know, and even if we looked at negotiation, like, you know, you almost imagine it, you're in the boardroom or you're in a legal office and like, now we negotiate. Exactly right. We are negotiating the whole time because people are sizing you up from that very first moment. I remember it's a bit like, I don't know if you're into horses, but I remember when I went horse riding for the first time, and you go up to the horse and you're pretending you really know what to do with the horse. I tell you what, they just look at you and size you up with 2 seconds. They notice how you approach them, how you put your arm out, how you talk to them, the tone. They can almost smell a bit of, you know, fear, anxiety or whatever. It's quite hilarious. And I've learned a lot from those sorts of experiences going, yep, they know, you know, and I think we in business, we know. And when you're going global in your business, there's so much need to actually go, okay, well, you know, I need to keep polishing my skills, but how is that other person or company interpreting every single thing that we do or say? It's fascinating.
And I think it's also about being yourself. It's about being yourself, because when I first started presenting, you know, with my backpacking experience and this kind of thing, and I thought, oh, gee, well, people really want to know that, because, you know, I was just a backpacker, just, you know, with no money. But that's the stuff they love. Exactly. You know, and it also, what it does is it puts me on the same level, because what I find is that for some reason, people often think that you must be so clever because you speak Mandarin, but it's actually, it's not rocket science. It's just another way of thinking.
Yeah.
And so it's about, because if you're on a different level to your audience, then they won't learn off you because they don't feel comfortable. So by telling them the story, you know, no university degree, popped into Taiwan, did this, it actually gives people, you know, the idea, well, I can do that too. You know, it's okay. It's okay.
Which has been a fantastic part of your sharing today with our audience, because that's right. Many people have an intentional story that they know what they want and they go get it. Whereas your journey has been very much, I just went backpacking, found my way, sometimes just due to desperation of money or opportunity or what's next, or that creative spirit, or, hey, I'm actually enjoying the lifestyle benefits, I'll do that more, and following your path. And then having those, being present in, you know, finding, you know, you don't know the destination, but you're being present in the moment, and then having those crazy moments where, yeah, that's right, you meet someone and it totally gives you a whole new clarity or an opportunity, and you just seize it. And sometimes you never see them, you know, it's almost like they're God sent at that time, you know, like, how did you connect with them? And it was such a powerful influence, and other people want to influence, but there's no connection there. And I think your story, that's right, that you can do things at any time as well. You know, that university, which you had mentioned many times when we first started, it was obviously a big thing for you. One, because, well, we won't be encouraging people to fake their quals.
No, please, I'm not encouraging that. That was pure survival.
Exactly. And those were the times as well. But also, and it didn't come back to bite you, but it was also in your essence actually something that you did want to do. And, you know,
exactly.
And it was being given the opportunity to do it and finding the right time. And that story that you're sharing, that, you know, I know many people who, particularly mums, who've missed that moment or had their kids a bit younger than expected and think, oh, well, I can't do that now. You know, your journey shows that you can just keep doing it at any time. And you can just, once you're on that, you can just see what evolves and take those opportunities. I bet that moment when you're applying for that grant, that scholarship, you're like, what's the likelihood, right, that you would be the winner, right? Because we all doubt ourselves. We all just kind of go, oh, well, is it even worth it? There's probably hundreds of people.
That's what I was thinking.
And they're probably so much more, smarter than me, more capable than me. They probably already know someone in the department. All of that head stuff.
Yeah.
And then you go, just do it, right? How many times in your
Have a go.
story have you just went, I'm just going to have a go. I'll wait
Have a go.
till someone says no, right?
Exactly. And even with my books, now, Annie, it's interesting because I thought, well, the books are finished. The last one's just has to be edited. And there's writers' weeks all across Australia. I'll apply for that.
Yes.
Why not?
Why not?
I'm going to halfway through this year. An Indonesian publisher actually bought the rights to the books about a year and a half ago. I think I told you about that in our last conversation. That's another story. But the fact that they're now international, I'm going to then work out because that was just came out of the blue. But I'm going to work out how to apply to the big publishers properly. Yes. How to send your manuscript there properly, and why not have a go across the world? Because
have a go. Actually, I'll introduce you to Jane Turner, who was recently on my podcast, who is an author from Australia. So I'll definitely make that connection, because that's it. Isn't it fun? It's interesting. Often we go, oh, you've got to understand everything before you do it or learn it or even do the course. And then other times you go, wow, that's right. Now you've got some books. Well, how do people get them, self-published? How do people get them? How do you get into these writing groups and presenting on them? They're all just opportunities. And then that's it. Once you open the gate, it's fascinating. I've been on different groups like that. You just suddenly, it's like you open a little bit and then you find this whole world in, just behind the door, whether it's a new Facebook group or a new community or a new opportunity. And then you suddenly find so many people who are just like you, who've done that journey before. And I'm usually more than happy to share, right? Like,
yes,
I find people are generally so much more kind and considerate and helpful than you would ever imagine. So
they're amazing, and people do share. And I also find one of the things that really helps with people moving on with different things is that you put yourself around people that think the same as you, that are and it's not necessarily that they're going to get you work, but that an example for me is, and they're completely different organizations, but the Australia-China Business Council, I'm actually on the executive committee of that, and that's purely China stuff. And I'm also involved in the professional speaking group, the PSA, the Professional Speakers Australia. So, and professional speaking group, nobody's doing anything to do with China, but it's not that they get any work. But I see all these other people that are speaking for a living.
Yes.
They've had these most interesting stories. So, and if you put yourself around those kind of people, then when you go out to network, they'll give you ideas. You'll see other people do things. And it's almost like you're setting up your own professional development.
Yes. Yes. I always love to think, that you're the weakest link in the room, right? Because you can only go up and learn and absorb, and it's just great. And also that you've just got to be in the right pond. If those of you who are listening and just go, oh, it's so frustrating, or how do you get in? Just dive in, find the right pond to
dive in.
Because that's right. Just sort of swimming around in it. You're watching, you're learning, you do end up getting connections. You don't have to make it too intense. You don't have to go overboard, harass people. Opportunities will come, and I've learned that even just by doing this podcast. You just have people on, and then opportunities come because you strike up relationships. You see what other people are doing. If they're in your space, that will happen naturally and organically rather than trying to manufacture things, right? Because ultimately it's all relational. It's all connections. It's all that people feel comfortable that there's a fit, right? If there's no fit, and particularly there has to be a fit business-wise, then, why bother? And that's not personal either. It's just that people are busy and they're all looking for that. So I do.
And as you meet people more and more too, then you get to know how to talk about what you do.
Yes.
I always remember when I first started this in 1998, when I won the scholarship, I was going to companies to introduce myself. And most of the companies wanted to meet with me, and I'd go and talk about what I did. And then they'd say, fantastic, Leonie. Gee, it was really great to meet you. You've got such an interesting story. And I walk out the door and I thought, what I wasn't doing was actually
Hooking.
Explaining to them how they can use me.
Yes.
How they can use me. And so then I realized that and I thought from that process, all of these people are interested. They're doing work with China, but they're not going to say to me, Leonie, we need to learn how to pronounce names. We need to learn the assure face. We need to learn where to sit at the table. They don't know. And so then I'd write them out an outline. These are the things that you'll get in my training. And I don't think anybody ever said, oh, that's not what we want to learn. They said, oh, this is great, because I'd met with them and then let them talk about their situation and then went back to my office, wrote up a document and put some dot points in there about what I can do, because otherwise I realised I was walking. It's like putting an amazing computer on someone's desk and not or this fandangled car and not showing them anything about it. Yeah. And that's what I was doing. And I think that's for me, that was a really good lesson, because people don't know how to use you if you don't explain to them. And it's about listening what their needs are and then meeting those needs, because sometimes what you think they need is completely different to what they need.
Exactly. You've got to know with 100% clarity what problem do you solve for them, not what you love doing and why you did it. That's great for a keynote in that context, but at the end of the day, if you're using it for business, it's knowing your market, what problem you solve for them, and what are their key pain points. So for you, I know you've got an online platform that then shows you how to pronounce Mandarin words in a really easy, simplistic way. So therefore, it's not that you're a fluent Mandarin teacher and you've got all of this. It's like if you were in a business and you deal with a lot of people who are Chinese, and it's really important for your business that you pronounce their names and some of the words with the right sort of accent or flow. Then this is a really fantastic, convenient product for you. Then the person will go, yeah, I have that. That's right. Problem, right? So it's very much knowing who you're speaking to, what they're needing, and how you can help them in a very easy way. It's leaving the breadcrumbs, right? If this is your problem, then come back to me. Yeah.
And it's also about not going to a potential client with a bag full of everything, like saying I've got this and this, because it would be like going to a furniture shop and you go in there and you know that you want to buy a lounge suite, okay? But what happens is they take you to that and they say, look, we'd really love to show you this bedroom suite, and we'd really like to show you this dining room table, but you're not actually interested. You're sold on the lounge suite. So it's about looking at what they really need, and not going in with a whole bag of things, unless they say, look, how can you help me?
Exactly. I know.
And most of the time it's getting to know the client, and then once they've bought the lounge suite, then they'll probably go back to the shop and they'll buy the dining room table from you. But they need to see what you've got first.
Exactly. And we all have to do that. Look after our immediate needs first, and then suddenly it's like when you renovate your house, right? You suddenly do the most important, the one that you wanted to do, like the new kitchen, and then suddenly you look around and go, oh, it never finishes. I'd like to do this, and then I'd like to do that, but you don't know that initially, right? So
that's right.
I think that's really, really terrific advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on my program today. It's been so fascinating.
Absolute pleasure.
So everybody listening, definitely go to Leonie McKeon and just Google her name. You'll find her 6 books on those Chinese strategies. They're absolutely fascinating. She's definitely got online programs for you as well if you're wanting to learn more about how to pronounce Mandarin in a very easy way. And she's just a phenomenal lady. Thank you so much, Leonie.
Thank you. We're all phenomenal. We're all phenomenal.
We are, and that's
we are all
this
phenomenal in our own way. Everyone's got a story. Everybody's story is different, and I think and that's why one of the things I love about conferences, and maybe this is something for your listeners, is if they are presenting, at a conference, because conferences will start to come back in soon, and they are, is that if they get a gig, what they call a gig at a conference, try and stay for the couple of days that the conference is there, because you'll get a ticket in. The conference organisers will give you a ticket, and that's when you get to really know people. But I've seen people fly in, fly out, or they do their half an hour and they go out and they never meet people. But your real connections are over lunch, over dinner, out at, over coffee. After they see you speak, they want to talk to you. So if you can allow that time, a couple of days or a day, to talk to those people after you speak, that's just a piece of advice, because I know that you train with speakers.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice, and so true. And sometimes people don't know the questions they've got until they've pondered what you've said, and you've had that time, or they build up the courage to come and talk to you because you're still bridging that, they'll still think you're a very important person, and all of those sorts of things. It's actually just being natural and making yourself available, and developing those relationships. So thank you so much. So many gems today, and I wish you all the best for your future.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on your show, Annie. Great to be here. Okay. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbins.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes, and of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.